All right, Jake, kick us off here.
All right. Well, I just kind of was looking at what, Frank? What? All right. Well,
it pains you to say this. Whatever is coming next.
Yeah,
It's not a happy Jake.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not a happy Jake, Frank, because I have two of the guys that are in this dead zone. So basically, I was looking at this, the keep trade cut running back rankings, and at the top, rightfully so, have Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams. You know, the pretty much top tier young running backs that have a, bright 3 years ahead at minimum. You then move into the guys like Christian McCaffrey, very injury prone. Austin Eckler, hitting that age where running backs start to go downhill. He's 26. You got Joe Mixon. He's 25, so he's a little younger, but also in that age where he's already got his extension. What happens now? He's on a big contract. Do they look to cut him in the future? You got Dalvin Cook, who that's the same thing. Nick Chubb, same thing. Saquon Barkley, who's 25 and coming off a down season where I think he was outside the top 24 running backs. And just didn't look good coming off his injury. You have Derrick Henry, who's 28. You have Alvin Kamara, who's 26. So, right now, I just think the whole running back value is just completely – it's just hard to trade for a running back at this point because you either have to just pony up and give all your assets for one of those top four guys, Jonathan Taylor, Swift, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, or you're buying a guy that's really just a major question mark and are overpriced, in my opinion, or underpriced in some cases. It really depends on who you're talking about. So a guy like David Montgomery, who's 24 and is running back 17, I think is just completely underpriced because he has very few question marks. He has a stable quarterback. They just got a new head coach, which I guess that's kind of a question mark. But outside of that, they should be pretty much the same offense moving forward, if not better than they were last year. So I don't know how you guys feel about it. I just think right now is a very difficult time to buy and or sell running backs for that matter because everyone's worried about 1, the draft, 2, free agency, and 3, coaching changes. Everyone's just worried about something, and I just think it's almost impossible to get a deal that you like right now on these running backs.
I think if you have one who's not young, it's insanely hard to sell. But I think if you're a contender for some of these kind of, I guess, the vets or the older backs, if people are staying even somewhat close to keep trade cut value, you can get some really good value buys. Kamara at RB16 behind ETN. Who else? Kareem Hunt at RB28 right next to Ramondre Stevenson. Aaron Jones at 22. These are guys who over the next 2-3 years can be every week starters in your lineups.
I did not realize that Kamara was RB16. That took me wildly by surprise. But
no, that's what I was saying.
I think I saw a trade go down in one of my leagues that I wish I did. And I actually, in the league that I have Dalvin Cook, one of these RBs in that zone, I offered a very similarly structured deal. And I saw the deal was the team that has Dalvin Cook gives, obviously, Dalvin Cook, Juju Smith-Schuster, and pick 209 for Christian McCaffrey in 310. And if you look on Keep Trade Cut, I actually think the team that is getting Dalvin Cook is winning that slightly, at least at the time. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. Even though I like Juju Smith-Schuster and 209 for their value, I think that moving Dalvin Cook up, and we had talked about this a couple episodes ago, packaging stuff up on top of Dalvin Cook to move into a running back like a Christian McCaffrey, whose value is down a little bit right now. There's a lot of question marks, but God forbid he's on the field and he's 20 points a game. If you have a team that is willing to move on to McCaffrey, a deal structured like this, I think is absolutely fantastic. And I honestly wish that I was the person to come up with this because this is the type of deal that I am currently trying to do and would encourage others to try and do if possible.
I agree. I mean, I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea in theory, but I think a lot of people would struggle to get that done just because of the fact that the Christian McCaffrey owner is looking at him and going, okay, this is the all-time points per game leader in fantasy points for a running back. All time. He is the most per game. And you're going to move into a slightly older back with injury history. Like, I just don't think that's something that gets done very often. Now, I understand Christian McCaffrey's value is down right now, and I understand why. But at the same time, I just think I think you would be hard pressed to find a person to do that.
GT, are you putting that in to keep trade cut right now? That trade? Is that what you're doing?
I'm not doubting that it'll come out close to fair, if not fair. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that you're following all the steps that you can kind of follow to give up a good offer while still getting the things that you want. You know?
Yeah, Lounis, you have Christian McCaffrey in our league. If I offered you the same thing, if I offered you Dalvin Cook, Juju, and a mid-second round pick, I even without adding the third back, I feel like you would be an instant call.
Yeah, no, I feel like if you're an owner trying to trade McCaffrey for another running back, you're trying to get like a young, healthier one. You don't want to trade him for like someone who's pretty much like kind of similar to McCaffrey, where it's like getting older, has had injury history. Like that's just a lateral move where it's like if either of them stay healthy, McCaffrey obviously has a higher ceiling.
I think, especially at this time of the year, pretty much all of these older running backs, or even the younger ones, for a different reason. I think the owner of the older running back is saying, hey, this is Dalvin Cook. He's been a top 10 running back for the past 3 years. I want a first-round pick and more. And the other side's going, well, he is 3 years older now, and has the injury history. I'm not going to give you that first-round pick, and it makes it hard for a deal to come through. And this isn't just about Dalvin Cook. This is about other guys. If you look at same thing with Christian McCaffrey, they're going to even want more than you would for Dalvin Cook. They want 2 first-round picks now from Christian McCaffrey. And you go, well, this guy's played 12 games in the past 2 years. Why the fuck am I giving up anything for him? So, like, I think even then, and then you go on the other side and you go, okay, well, how about I move into a Jonathan Taylor or a DeAndre Swift, one of these top young guys with no injury concerns at all, and the price is astronomically just out of this world, and it's not worth paying up to do. Because at the same time, Dalvin Cook could have a better season than any of these guys next season. I don't think that would shock anybody.
So,
yeah, no.
According to Keep Trade Cut, you were the side that was giving up Dalvin Cook was losing, or the side that was giving up Dalvin Cook was technically losing the trade by Curtis Samuel. In other words, they should have received another Curtis Samuel on top of CMC to make it fair, is what Keep Trade Cut says.
I mean, I don't think that.
I mean, listen, I was coming from the perspective that I saw this deal get done in one of my leagues. I offered it. It has not been declined, but it's been sitting there for like a week and a half. So, you don't think that's going to get accepted? Outside of that, this kind of does, because you're right? Someone like Dalvin Cook could easily outscore all these younger running backs ranked ahead of him. And that's almost one of the beauties of being a contender, is that you kind of have the leeway where it's like, dude, I'll go ahead and trade my younger players or picks or whatever to go get myself a Dalvin Cook to compete, where the rebuilders kind of can't do that or don't want to do that because you're investing in a depreciating asset.
Well, let me put it this way to you guys. Let me offer you a different trade. You tell me. Because I was just looking at our league and what I'd offer Lounis for CMC potentially. And what I came up with is Christian McCaffrey and 208 for Nick Chubb and Chase Claypool. What side would you guys rather have?
Nick Chubb and Chase Claypool, I think.
I think I'd take the CMC side.
That's a really close trade.
We already have a split here.
Like, I can tell you, like, as someone.
I mean, I like Nick Chubb a lot, and I know Frank does as well, which is why I'm surprised he.
I just like CMC more, dude. I'm just because I'm with Lounis, and I think this is one of the things that's annoying with Lounis is because Lounis also really likes Christian McCaffrey. I feel like people because of the injury concerns with CMC.
Wow.
Wait, what did I?
No, it's knowing that he likes Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to trade for Christian McCaffrey because, I mean, Christian McCaffrey checks every single box aside from you would have liked him to play more. I mean, the guy is on the field. He is ridiculous. And we are talking about historically the best player at the position in terms of fantasy points per game good. I mean, that's something, right? That's got to be something.
I'm not saying fade Christian McCaffrey. I'm just saying I think it would be hard to trade up from a Dalvin Cook or a Kamara.
Oh, yeah.
Or into a Christian. I think it would be hard because they're similar ages and, both obviously have injury history, but the difference between the two is significant to the McCaffrey owner here. And
but my argument, though, is that as long as you're not dealing with a Lounis or me, then we're talking about Juju Smith-Schuster and pick 209, right? If you need to show up a little more, if you need to make that 209 a 204, I don't give a fuck because I'm getting Christian McCaffrey, right? I don't care.
Yeah,
I would still definitely offer 204 and Juju if that's all it took on top.
I agree with that. My point was that it's not just it kind of turned into a Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey conversation rather than a running back as a whole. I think just the market right now is very, very difficult to maneuver. I think you really have to target guys that you believe in and you really think are going to have a role next year without seeing what happens in free agency, without seeing what happens in the draft, without all the offensive coordinator hires that have to go on still and stuff like that. It's tough because you have, like I said, there's just two kind of sides to this where no one really wants to give up what they have, but no one wants to pay up and or trade down. So it's just it's tough to maneuver. And I think all running backs just come with a massive question mark. And I think we saw that when we did our running back draft. And after about pick 12 or 13, we're like, oh God, I really don't like this one anymore. And that just goes to show that the running back market as a whole is very thin, which makes it even harder.
Well, another kind of hidden issue with this running back market is once you get past that running back 12, 13, 14, wherever that kind of huge drop happens, what I think it's doing, though, is it's overinflating a bunch of wide receivers. I think there's a lot of wide receivers right now that are getting incredibly overrated. And my question to you guys is, if we're looking at this of I just want to maintain the value of my team, I don't want, I'm a rebuilding team. I'm not looking to lose any value on my players currently. Where are you parking that value? Because I just think
not in the running backs. I'll tell you right now.
you got to move. I think you got to try and move to picks.
Well, what is the question? Where am I parking value, or how do I deal with the Dalvin Cook if I'm looking to maneuver him into something to park value into?
I guess we could do both. I mean, I kind of took us on a side tangent that's separate.
We had the same problem last year, if you remember, with Ezekiel Elliott and Derrick Henry on our orphan team, because these were two running backs that we knew, listen, we don't want to have the risk of holding the bag, right? We don't want to be caught holding the bag. So at the end of the day, you have to kind of not necessarily sell low, but you have to make a deal happen, which is usually you giving up slightly a little bit more. So I think I liked what we did with Zeke, where at the time we traded Zeke for a first and Darnell Mooney, right? That was the deal for Zeke, just Zeke.
Yep.
And at the time, that dude's first was one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the league at the time. Now, it wasn't by a crazy margin, but he had the best team, right? Or one of them. And
top team, yeah.
And Darnell Mooney was unproven. So at the time, I wasn't even necessarily a huge fan of the deal, but I figured we had to do it, right? I'd rather have the first and Darnell to just park into, split it up. All our marbles aren't in the Zeke pool where there's already been signs of deterioration. And we ended up doing Darnell Mooney in a second for a first, the pick upgrade from earlier. We already talked about how we like pick upgrades. And so all in all, I actually really like what happened with those deals. So I think that if you have Dalvin Cook or a Derrick Henry now, and you're scared of your value and you're not a contender and you need to start parking value, you have to try and get just the first. I mean, Zeke, it's already too far gone, but if you have a Dalvin, right, one of the running backs in the tier we're talking about, you just have to get the first and as much as you can on top of it, whether it's a Darnell Mooney or something else, buying low on a vet or whatever. Because at the end of the day, like, I think the first becomes worth it the next year. If you don't care about the points, like a year from now, Derrick Henry, I can almost guarantee is not going to be worth the first. So if you can get that and more, you have to do it now. And I think it's the best thing to do because JT's right. I put a poll out on Twitter. Which young receiver do you trade for? I can't fucking tell you. I don't want to trade for any young receiver right now, basically.
Yeah.
No, it's near impossible.
brutal.
The easiest way to buy those young receivers
is like Rondale Moore, right? Like one of the ones that was kind of shit last year or 2 years ago that you think you're just buying low on.
No, I mean, the cheapest time you're ever going to buy one of those stud young receivers is buying that first round pick and then drafting them. Because the second they have any type of success, they're immediately just are valued way more than that exact pick.
Yeah, if they have a bad rookie season, they're
still not
if they're top tier. Yeah, but not only that, it's more likely than not a bad investment if they have a bad rookie season.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
They typically don't go on to produce. So yeah. All right. Are we going to move on to
well, does
wrap it
anyone
up
have
with
any other
prospects?
ideas what you should do with your old running backs? I mean, Jake's kind of in the predicament right now. At least Jake, your team though, you can hold on to him because you're a contender. So like if you're caught holding the bag, it's like, well, at least he's scoring points for me. It's not the end of the world.
Right, which makes it even kind of tougher to really just do that trade we did with Zeke, where you just say, all right, I'll take a random first next year at a young prospect who I kind of have a little faith in to turn it around or continue to build on his rookie season, whatever it may be. It makes it tougher because then I'm sacrificing those points that I really don't want to sacrifice because my team is just a few pieces away. And if I have 2 first-round picks. If I make good picks there, it takes my team to another level. So it's just kind of it's just a real tough spot. But again, the bottom could just drop out of Dalvin Cook. It could drop out of Joe Mixon. It could drop out of Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, all these guys that are in that tier of the kind of elite running backs from the past few seasons. They're starting to hit the age where you just don't know what happens. And they're all on these big contracts now that teams don't love to pay running backs. And we've seen that. I think if you look at the salary of the Super Bowl winning team's running back from the past 10 years, not one of them has paid a running back more than $2.5 million for the season. So just to put that in perspective, all those guys make over $2.5 million.
Well, not only that, just look at the teams that gave the contracts. It's like all of a sudden you look by the end of it, they're wishing they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Right. So, and once that guaranteed money is up and once that, dead cap hit is not too significant, a lot of times what happens is they just cut them and say, thank you for your service. We're going to take one in the second round now and move on. That's pretty much what happens with these running backs is once they're no longer worth that high contract that they were paid, they get cut and then they're worth nothing.
Yeah. No, because that's what I was about to say. And then never mind the fact that not many teams give extensions. Any of the backs that do, most of the time, unless you're the Cowboys and overpay Zeke, most of them have it out pretty fast.
Not only did the Cowboys overpay Zeke, they backloaded the contract.
I know. It's absolutely terrible contract.
No, but I guess just quickly to end the discussion. So if you know that you're not going to compete or you're trying to do a retool or something, for some reason you don't care about the points, cutting bait for a little bit less than ideally you'd like to get is the move. We can all agree on that. What to do if you're a contender? I don't know if there necessarily is a cookie cutter answer.
I mean, if things
go
I'm
down with the
looking to
ship.
do,
that's what I've been doing with Zeke, and
that's what I'm kind of doing.
I'm happy I didn't sell him last year to a certain extent because he was good for my team.
I mean, it depends. It's case by case.
I mean, that's the tough situation is because you say okay, how about you move down into a lesser running back and a pick, right? And you look at the running backs underneath them and you're just like, well, I'm not going to get the likes of, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Cam Akers, Derrick Henry. You can get the Derrick Henry, but is it really solving your issue? No. And then you got guys like Etienne, which I'm just out on Etienne personally just because of his injury. and the Jaguars being a dumpster fire 24/7. But like now you get into the guys: David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, AJ Dillon, Michael Carter. Like, is getting one of those guys and a pick, is that worth it? Or do you, like Luna said, just go down with the ship of, I'm going to ride this workhorse until he really is done?
So you're making an interesting point for me I'm looking up the stats right now of a points per game basis. So Dalvin Cook finished as running back 11 points per game, 14.6. David Montgomery, 13.4. I think moving a Dalvin Cook for a David Montgomery with...
I've already came out and said I think David Montgomery is the best running back buy of the offseason. I think he's going to put up make a step similar to what Joe Mixon did this season. I think he's the next running back to do so. I just think, another year with Justin Fields, offense starts to come together in Chicago.
He's going to get a ton of touches.
And that as well. The touches usually comes production, especially when we've seen it from David Montgomery. We saw it last year. I know it was against a very poor schedule, but the last few games of the 2020 season, he was just an absolute monster and really won some guys some leagues. So I think he's one of the guys I would look to move into. But outside of him, that's the problem is I don't know if I trust Josh Jacobs in Vegas. I don't know if I trust Elijah Mitchell in San Francisco. And I certainly don't trust A.J. Dillon in Green Bay. So it just puts you in a situation where, like, yes, I do like the Montgomery move, but I don't know if if the owner that has him likes him, I think you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, I think that's the issue is that ideally you would love to move Dalvin Cook into a running back where you're only taking a point or 2 points per game loss. He might be younger, more sexier. If you could do that and get a David Montgomery, I personally like Elijah Mitchell. That'd be good. And stuff on top, like, great. But the problem is that I just think you got to reach a little bit too far down. Like, realistically, in savvier leagues, it's like you have to make that move for probably more of like a Michael Carter or maybe even lower. And at that point, there's real risk there because now you're believing in Michael Carter, right? And I'm not saying
you might have to,
or I don't.
You might even have to go as low as like a Ramondre Stevenson in a first-round pick, something like that, where you're really, starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel in terms of actual playable running.
Yeah, with a first, definitely. Like, I think that Dalvin, I personally don't have. It depends on where the first is and whatnot, right? Like, okay, if it's 112, that's a different story from 106, right? But let's just take an even keel 107. How about that? Yeah, 107 or Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe Dalvin Cook ideally is worth a little more, but it's the whole, like, you need to have the context to buy Dalvin Cook. You don't need context to get a 107. Everyone wants a 107. Even in a weaker draft class, it's not like no one can't use another good draft pick. But if you have a team, especially your dynasty league's been going on for a couple of years, and there's a clear line between the good teams and the bad teams, instantly those bad teams aren't trading for Dalvin Cook. So your market's shrunk, and then it's just tough. Yeah, Joe Herbert, trading an older running back means being okay with your team taking a short-term step backwards. It's almost like, sure. What would you rather have? The points or the value? You got to make that decision.
Yeah. You're never going to get the exact
correct answer. The correct answer is the value. I can't speak for some reason, but I think I've always said it before, trade too early rather than too late. And older running backs, more times than not, once they hit 26, 27, 28, they're done. And if you wait to, like, Dalvin Cook, he's 26. So everyone knows the cliff is coming, especially with his injury.
You want to know what's funny? I put on a Post-it note. I actually completely forgot about this. Look at this. Segment. Can you read that? My handwriting is terrible. That says RB longevity and prospects underneath it, because we're going to talk about prospects soon here. I actually wanted to talk about this very thing because I somewhat disagree with you, but agree with you at the same time. So let's table this for next week.